So we're going to do a good job now because we've got terrific guests joining us on our live coverage to make sense of the current situation and what the possible next steps are going to be in this very, very viciously fought election. Joining us live, Eric McDaniel, Associate Professor, University of Texas, live from Austin. Welcome, Professor. Neelam Deo, Director of the Gateway House and former diplomat. Dr. Sreeram Chaulia is a world affairs analyst and Dean with the Jindal School of International Affairs. And with me here in the studio at India Today is Geeta Mohan, our foreign affairs editor, who hasn't slept. She's been tracking all the numbers as they've come in. She's really on American time right now, bringing all of those numbers in. And we still don't have all of those numbers. Chaulia, the fact that the polls had predicted, a landslide for the Democrats, that it would be a decisive victory until a day before counting. What happened in your view?
Well, I think, Shiv, Joe Biden did not have the enthusiasm factor behind him. A lot of the votes he seems to have received are more like anti-Trump votes. People who are fed up with him for one reason or the other, because of corona failure, because of the economic crisis, because of racial issues, because of climate change, lots of issues. But I think the Democrats had a ground game, and you can see if Biden really flips Arizona and possibly Wisconsin, where they're saying now he is leading, then he's basically won it. And he definitely, Biden still has his nose ahead in the race. But I think you're right that that blue wave never came, and part of the reason is Trump. His base is very loyal to him. Carlton Tucker, one of the Fox News anchors, a favorite of Trump, wrote an opinion piece saying, why do people, the diehard Trump fans, love him so much? And he says it's because he loves them back. Nobody loves these white working class people who don't have college degrees across the small towns. So you see the division. The Biden camp should have actually won more white working class votes because of the pandemic and of the economic crisis. But I think instead, I think he was a lackluster candidate, and Biden is not a very impressive figure when it comes to pulling crowds and getting people worked up. And Trump was campaigning very vigorously towards the end, despite his own COVID-19 positive situation. I think definitely there was a difference in vigor. But end of the day, I still think that Biden is a favorite now because the absentee and the mail-in, that's where the Democrats will expect a surge.
Of course,
and if the courts uphold it, then he's going to win it. But still, you are talking about the contention and the controversy and the allegations of fraud, the total distrust in institutions that Trump has spread. I think that's going to linger. So for his diehard base, no matter what happens, Trump has won. And they will not accept this. And the legitimacy crisis of the American politics continues.
On the back of the polls, Dr. Chaulia, there was a view that this was going to be a vote that would establish a sort of repudiation of Trump's presidency. That definitely hasn't happened. That blue wave definitely hasn't happened. But at the same time, there will be questions for Trump as well, because he exuded confidence right through that. That is never a measure of electoral performance. But there is a sense that the grand old party will also need to do a certain measure of soul searching, that this wasn't a decisive vote in their favor. Apart from the air of anxiety in the United States over the numbers, Dr. Chaulia, we've also seen it, in a very tangible way. You've seen, the National Guard deployed everywhere. You've seen businesses being boarded up. You've seen, firearm sales surging. So there is a palpable, there is already a palpable sense that this was not going to be a clear-cut victory and that there was going to be a possibility of trouble. So both on the streets and then in the courts, the narrative of trouble has already been set.
Yeah, Shiv, I think it's a continuing crisis. I would see America, actually my analysis is from 2008 onwards. Right since the global economic crisis began, it's going through tremendous churning, and the divisions, the polarization we talk about have just been building up. Trump's narrow victory in 2016 was itself an outcome of that long crisis. And I don't see this election as resolving that crisis either. I think they will need one event or is not going to resolve. This is actually to do with, larger fault lines, socio-economic problems, structural issues in American society, the relationship with the rest of the world, the perceived failure of globalization, the gap between the haves and the have-nots. All those are forcing these, clear ideological hatred and division to the society. So I think you're right. The prospect of violence is there. And remember, the violence started even before the election with the racial, the killings by the police, and then the protests, Black Lives Matter. So I think the way it's going, even if, let's say, Biden wins, can he heal this nation? I don't think so. At 78, and maybe Kamala Harris can do something, pull a rabbit out of the hat. But I don't think Biden alone, he's going to be a transitional figure. I don't see that kind of, strong leadership emerging to unify the country. Biden replayed the Obama era slogan that we are not red states or blue states, we are United States.
Yes.
But actually, Shiv, if you look at on the ground, that's not echoed much. If he comes through, it's just because, Trump messed up on some fronts and overplayed his hand. So I don't think the US is emerging stronger from this. And frankly, for us
Good
in
point,
India,
yeah.
that's a concern, because if the US is going to be withdrawn and distracted and internally completely fraught, what kind of role will it play in the world? So I think it's a very distressing scenario for the US overall.